Hi all, welcome to the last official module of the course. We'll talk about how you can go forward from what you've learned and what exactly you can do next in the coming few months. To take a quick recap of the course so far, we've understood the basics and the internals of how web apps work. We've also looked at networking basics and tools that we use to analyze the network. We've understood the separation of front end and back end code. We've also further separated the back end code into code and data. Within databases, we looked at how to model data, how to model constraints, what normalizing data models refers to, and how we can derive data from existing data. We also looked at factors that affect performance of the database and of the web app in general. We looked at important security models for apps and covered quite a few best practices for how to think about security. We also built and deployed a very simple application over the course. So there are some things that you should have learned that were not explicitly taught, and that is very important for you as you go forward. The first thing to understand is that if you attack topics from first principles and develop a fundamental understanding, most concepts become quite simple. So all of what we did with apps and app development does not quite seem like rocket science in hindsight because we thought about it from foundational principles. Over the practicals, and as you did the practicals and watched the practicals, I hope that you took away the fact that it is okay to make several mistakes and to learn from other people. It is especially okay to continuously use the resources that we have at our disposal, all of those resources that come through primarily Google searches, through Stack Overflow questions and answers, through blogs, through documentation, and learning from these sources is the new kind of learning, especially when it comes to development. As you are programming and building apps, it is very important to debug issues scientifically, and when we are confronted with errors, and often they'll be complicated errors, it is important to calmly sit down and look at what these errors are and then try to debug them instead of trying to attack the problem head on. And this is again something that comes with programming experience. The best way of learning and putting these concepts together is actually by building applications, and I hope that's another thing that you took away from this course when you realize that there is a vast difference between just observing the theory and looking at that theory being practiced. Another thing that might have inconvenienced several of you is to understand that Linux is an extremely important skill set. The largest number of servers in the world run on Linux, and most open source components, open source libraries and tools are built on Linux and are most easily used on Linux. Linux as an operating system exposes you to fundamentals and tools of the operating system and of the development experience that are very important to know as an engineer and as a developer, and these are not as easily accessible on operating systems like Windows and to a certain extent Mac. So please try to install a version of Linux, or at least get familiar with the Linux command line and the Linux terminal, and to get familiar with Linux as an operating system. With all of the knowledge that you've gained, what can you do next? You have a foundation now for understanding what the tech landscape is and what the developer experience is. You can now use this to build apps yourself, and you can confidently join a tech team as a junior member and learn from them, but while learning from them also make small and tangible contributions. And this clearly tells us that the next possible things that you should be doing are building more and learning more things, and also joining and working as a part of technical teams. The best way of doing that, if you're still in university and you're not looking for a job immediately, is to participate in as many hackathons as you can, or to generally build things. So let's get into two specific points. Let's first look at what kind of career skill sets and what kind of technologies you should look at if you're looking at growing into a career of web development or development in general. So if you're looking at front-end development, then the two common tools that you should look at that should be the next steps for you are Bootstrap and tools like Sass, which make it easier to write CSS. So not only should you be familiar with the HTML, CSS and JS languages and technologies, but also familiar with frameworks and tools like Bootstrap and Sass. If you're getting into less design work and more front-end development work, then it's very important to have good HTML and JavaScript fundamentals. Libraries that you should use are jQuery or Backbone, Angular and React. Backbone and Angular React are fairly advanced libraries, and it's best to start off with something like jQuery so that you can build things quickly and learn during that building process. As a backend developer, it is most important for you to get familiar with one of the modern programming languages like Python, Ruby or Node.js, because the developer community experience that these languages have is now unparalleled. So start off with something like Python, Ruby and Node.js. I've mentioned some of the most popular frameworks here for each of these different languages that you can get started with. On the databases side, it is very important to get familiar with the SQL language and to start using it to do things and to gain a certain amount of expertise with it. It's also important, if you're getting into databases, to gain a certain amount of administrative experience like installation, troubleshooting, replication, backups, and maybe even sharding at a more advanced stage. The last kind of category for a broad category of career skill sets is in the DevOps or sysadmin skill sets. And here it is most important to be familiar with Linux, to get familiar with the command line. And the best way to get started with it is to have a Linux machine or to SSH into a Linux server and use that to set systems up. The next point that I would like to discuss is how you should continue learning what you've just started. There are 5 broad points. The first point is that you should build apps for fun, because building is the only way of actually learning all of these concepts. The second is to continuously upgrade your tooling. The third is to contribute to open source and community. The fourth is to participate actively on online forums, especially ask questions and answer questions on Stack Overflow. And the fifth is to read good technical news and to join good communities. So let me get into detail with each of them. When I say building apps for fun, I mean that you should not worry about what the value of that application to anyone beyond you or the people that you know is. It doesn't matter if it's not useful to everybody. It doesn't matter if it's not going to be a business or a good product one day. All that matters is that you built a product that a few people can use, and it will give you very valuable experience in how to build applications. Try to make these projects open source so that if you're ever going to join a team or work with other developers, they can look at your code. And so make your projects open source so that other people that you might work with, either in a job or with other developers, they can look at your code and they'll be able to judge where you are in your growth as a developer. A very important thing is to continuously upgrade your tooling, and this is a problem that I've noticed quite frequently. It means that, for example, do not write code in things like Notepad, right? Keep trying to use better and better tools and see what is a better way of doing things. Any repetitive action that you're performing while coding probably has a tool to automate it. For example, if you realize that you're running 3 or 4 scripts at the same time to build something, to test something, to deploy something, you should write a script or you should use a tool that handles that automatically for you. Another important and silly sounding point is to learn how to touch type, right? And that will increase your speed as a programmer and as a developer by a huge factor. Contribute to the open source community, and the easiest way to do this is by contributing to documentation. So if you like a particular library or tool that you use and you feel that the documentation it could be better, then contribute to the documentation. Maintainers of those open source projects would love the contribution that you are doing if you put in enough effort to make sure that the documentation is structured well. For example, a lot of very popular tools don't have a guide of how to use that tool on Windows, and that could be a nice way to sort of get started in contributing to the open source project. Once you get started with documentation and get familiar with the idea of contributing and talking and collaborating with other developers online, you can then move on to fixing bugs for open source projects. So you can pick up an open source project, fork the repository, read the contribution guide, and look at the issue list to find what kind of a bug you can solve and what kind of bugs people are facing. Fix the issue and then submit a pull request back to the user or a merge request back to the original open source project maintainer, and they will merge it and make it a part of the open source project. Join programs like GSOC, which is Google Summer of Code. Try to join this kind of a program which is meant for advanced developers or intermediate developers and is kind of like an internship, but where you work on an open source project and not with any particular company. The fourth point is actually a very simple and a very specific point. Ask questions on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is one of the best developer forums on the internet and is almost the default developer forum on the internet. Ask questions there and also try to answer questions on Stack Overflow and build up a profile on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow profiles are now increasingly used for hiring. So for example, if I'm hiring a particular engineer, I would look at that engineer's Stack Overflow profile to see what kind of questions and answers he's asked or how many points he or she has. The fifth point is important so that you are continuously updated with what is happening in the tech community, because there are a lot of changes happening, there are a lot of best practices that are continuously evolving and new technologies and tools that are coming out. Join good community forums like Hacker News. Participate in discussions, upvote things that you like. Don't be a passive user, be an active user. Submit articles that you find interesting to Hacker News. People will upvote it and that will increase your points on the forum. Read newsletters like Slashdot and subscribe to audio podcasts, and these are like These are talks that happen by experts. These are half an hour to 1 hour talks that happen by experts every week that you can listen on, and the topics are everything from estimating how long a software project will take all the way to how to use a new database or a new data system. Next, at IMAT, we'll be looking at a few more advanced courses that we'll be releasing next year on databases, on software engineering, and on DevOps or sysadmin. The next version of the same course in January will feature an improved code console, and we will take from our learnings from this particular course on how to improve it. We'll also understand how to better manage a community. This has been our first time at managing a large community, and we'll see how we can improve it and take learnings from there. We'll also make the flow of content much more smooth and improve the content from where we've received feedback from the students. To wrap up, on behalf of the instructors and on behalf of everybody participating in this course, I would like to thank the NPTEL team for helping us set up the assignments and the offline examinations, for hosting the course dashboard and the course curriculum, the team at Hasselhoff for helping the IMAT team in building the code console and in setting up the shared hosting system, in doing the migrations. So a lot of you might not know, but right in the middle of the course, the entire system was migrated from Microsoft Azure to Google Compute, and all of this happened without a single hitch. I would like to thank the IMAT team, who are all student volunteers from IIT Madras, who've taken their time off without any expectation of a remuneration, and they have volunteered despite their schedule and despite their coursework and exam work. I would like to thank and the industry consultants who've come together to set up the curriculum for this course, and of course I would like to thank all of the students and the viewers of this course for the amazing activity on the forum, and a special thanks to our volunteer moderators who've helped other students and who've helped us communicate with the student community very easily. Just to wrap up, I've put together some interesting statistics from our course. It seems that most people who've taken the course have been in the age group of 18 to 34, and most of them are university students, as you can see, who are 18 to 24, but there's a substantial chunk, about a fifth of the total participants of the course are actually people from the industry and much after university. We don't have a very healthy proportion of female participants yet, so about 1/3 of all of the students who've taken the course and 1/3 of the people participating in this course were women. It will be a sincere effort from our side to bridge that and make sure that we have at least an equal representation. A few more interesting statistics. It seems that most of the content was consumed by videos that were embedded on the NPTEL forum, and this we did not expect. We expected most of the content to be consumed from the YouTube pages directly, and so this is an interesting learning for us. It also seems that there is a significant percentage of people who have viewed this course through their mobile phones and not just their computers, which is also interesting and goes towards understanding how much mobile phones and tablets have changed the landscape and how much more they will change the landscape in the year to come. To wrap up this course, I would like to end with a thought for all of you to keep learning and to keep building solutions, and I hope to engage with you further in the various hackathons and in the next and the subsequent courses that we do as a part of the IMAT program.